It's fair to say that I quite like Sorcerer, and I have thoughts when it comes to Sorcerer Season 4.
In conclusion,
Okay, I do want to go a little bit more in depth than that. I really do adore this class. I have played it in pre-season and every season. I have spent countless hours testing, theory crafting, building, and sharing the results of that with you guys across numerous builds that I'm very happy and proud with, and you guys love them too, and that really does make me happy, and it's super appreciated, it really is. I just can't get enough of it. I love magic and spell effects and doing big damage quickly while also moving just as quickly, so really, I'm all in. And Sorcerer has had its ups and downs, admittedly probably more downs. The less said about the error of just resistance is not working, the better. The height of Season 2 Ball Lightning will ever be fondly remembered. And indeed, it was in Season 2 that I achieved one of the best things I've done on Sorcerer, which was the highest rank in Abattoir of Zia without upgrading the Blood Glyph, because I wanted to see just how far I could get on pure perfect buildcraft. So that was a very, very cool record to hold. But in any case, we're in Season 4 now, and Sorcerer is in a weird place. I would describe it as the worst best class in the game. Now, let's ignore my bias where I want to say clearly it's the most fun class, though I do think there is an argument for that. It just kinda has that something to it, but I would say that because it's the one that I click with the most. You would say that about the one that you click with the most. But I think there is never been more of a divide about Sorcerer, its players, and its place in the game than Season 4. And we'll start with this. Sorcerer is the weakest class. Or worst, if the raw damage output and survivability levels of a class is how you determine its worth. And that's kind of empirically provable because as I say this, it is the worst pit pusher. It's got the lowest, highest record. It is behind the other four classes. You've got Necros, of course, storming ahead, then Barbs, then Druids, then Rogues, and then Sorcerer. Now, of course, that might shuffle as things change. Sorcerer does have the Infinite Flame Shield Cheese, which is one of the most boring things that I have ever seen, but hey, technically it gets the job done. But look, it's not a patch on what most of the other classes are doing, and that's a shame. It definitely is. In terms of just raw damage, there's no denying that our heights, our peak, were falling behind in Season 4. However, you only need to get to pit level 61 to get the tier 3 material to 1212 masterwork. Everything past that is literally pointless. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy pushing it because I like pushing Sorcerer, and I like doing difficult content, and I like solving that puzzle. I find that very satisfying, and so do a lot of people, and that's really cool. But technically speaking, there is no reason nor reward to keep pushing the pit endlessly that we're aware of. There might be some secret super, like, cosmetic title horse or, totally useful thing at, like, rank 150 to 200, but the point remains, you're really not gaining anything other than, vanity, pride, a sense of accomplishment. So in that regard, does it actually inherently matter which class is best or worse at arbitrarily pushing pit difficulty for the sake of pushing pit difficulty? I think there's a strong argument to be made that no, it doesn't. So yes, Sorcerer is the weakest class because in the hardest content, it's performing the worst. But I also think the argument can be made it's the best class because in the other, 98% of the game, in the entirety of the rest of Diablo, in Nightmare Dungeons up to 100, in New Helltide, in boss ladder farming, Torment boss farming, in any other activity you could mention, Sorcerer, there's a big argument to say it reigns supreme. Arguably not in Torment boss farming, though our best build still kills them in like 25 seconds, so it's not exactly bad, but yeah, okay, definitely below Barb and Necromancer there. But in all of the other things, Sorcerer gets the job done lightning quick, and in a game where it's how much can you farm of X thing you're farming as fast as possible to achieve things, getting things done lightning quick is kind of the biggest metric. Reaching the minimum required damage to blow through every content that isn't pit pushing is very easy for every class to do, including Sorcerer. But Sorcerer can do it in a way that is, as I keep saying, lightning quick. Chiefly thanks to teleport, but just the flow and speed of Sorcerer builds is kind of unparalleled compared to a lot of the other classes. The gap is larger or smaller depending on which build you compare it to. There are monstrously fast Rogue and Druid builds, for example, but in terms of just general flow, yeah, you really can feel it when you're playing a Sorcerer. But I think beyond that, Sorcerer has, more than any other class, the greatest and most viable build variety going. And that makes for a very satisfying class fantasy experience, if build swapping is your thing. Of course, there is the completely valid mentality of, I just want to know the best build, the build that does the most damage while dying the least, and I will play that forever, thank you. But if you're someone like me that does like jumping around and trying things, well, you've got a lot of things to try. You've got Incinerate, you've got Ball Lightning, you've got Ice Spikes, you've got Frozen Orb, you've got Meteor, you've got Firewall, Firebolt, you've got Ice Shards, you've got Arc Lash, you've got so many builds that get the job done. And some of those builds I just mentioned can't pit push at all, but even in pit pushing, we have 4 separate builds that are all so close to each other that they could be argued to be the best pit pusher. Of course, Infinite Flame Shield Cheese leads the pack, but then it's very close behind. Every other class just kind of has the best build for that. So that in itself is really cool to see. Now, the argument could be made with, well, we have like 3-4 builds that are all the best for pushing the pit because they're all equally not that strong. And yeah, that is the half-empty way to look at it. But when it comes to, again, the other 98% of the game, there's about 9 separate Sorcerer builds that all feel fantastic, are all more than powerful enough, and all offer a very different playstyle. Even some more niche ones enabled by the season and tempering and new uniques, like you can play viably with just teleport, and that's something I can't wait to bring you guys, but there is a lot of good here. And I think that's why I describe Sorcerer in Season 4 as the best worst class. I think it is the worst class for the most difficult content in the game. I think it is the best class for the rest of the game. And it depends how much, well, everything I've talked about is relevant to you, means to you, is important to you in what you look for when you're choosing your class. I just really, on a base level, love the Sorcerer skills and how they inherently function. Numbers will change season to season, but mechanically, I do enjoy it. That said, I do think Sorcerer needs some help. I do think Sorcerer does need a little bit of a buff, just so it can compete a little bit better in the endgame content, because that is important. It's interesting, Sorcerer was the weakest class a fair few times in Diablo 4's history so far, and in those instances, it was a big case of we need help, we need resistances fixed, we need more damage, we need more survivability. It is a struggle and a pain to play Sorcerer, whereas Season 4, I don't think it's a struggle and a pain to play Sorcerer, so much that we just happen to not be quite as strong as the other classes, but on a base level, it's still really fun to play this class. So I do think, and I do hope, that in the large patch that's coming, in the inevitable mid-season changes, there is going to be a few little tune-ups, a few little issues addressed, and hopefully just some damage buffs to Sorcerers. But beyond that, the one big downside that I do need to talk about is that actually Sorcerers are broken. literally. There's been a lot of testing going on. I've done a lot myself, and my results agree. There are some issues with some sorcerer mechanics that just aren't functioning as intended, that if they were fixed, actually might give us the damage that we're missing. So, what do I mean? Well, if we head over to our codex aspects and have a look at shredding blades here, it is broken, and it has been broken since essentially it got buffed. So what do I mean as I head to our codex here? Aspect of shredding blades is broken, and it has been broken for a long time now. This is not a Season 4 thing, it's simply not applying the damage that it should apply, which really sucks, because if it did, it would be a really good aspect, but we essentially can't use it. It's either accidentally additive instead of multiplicative, or just not functioning at all, at worst, which is really bad, and I can't believe it's not been fixed. It gets worse though. One of our best aspects in Storm Swell, 30% multiplicative vulnerable, is only actually giving about half value in reality. It feels like vulnerable modifiers are broken this season, at least for Sorcerer, because it keeps going, but Storm Swell isn't working properly. And it's still arguably good enough to use even at half value, which tells a lot about how much damage we're missing by it being broken. There still needs to be more testing on if there is a better aspect to replace it where it would go. There are definitely some options, but that's really, really not good. And it keeps going. Beyond aspects, well, if we have a look at Paragon, a legendary node that we literally always take in every single build, Frigid Fate, this is also only functioning at about half strength, so 15 instead of 30, which again is a lot of damage to be missing, and again an issue with vulnerable. And it keeps going. If we look at the skill tree, Icy Touch here also is seemingly broken and not giving as much damage as it should, and also vulnerable. So, And lastly, also we have ourselves the Icefall node, which again does seem to be not giving its full value in damage, and again, vulnerable. So we are missing, conservatively, a colossal chunk of multiplicative vulnerable damage that we take in nearly every Sorcerer build because they're just the best, and especially the ice-based builds, Forb and Ice Spikes, where they would take Icefall, where they would take that skill, they're just not getting the damage, which is a massive unintended nerf to Sorcerer, and I actually think if all that was fixed, we would suddenly be quite competitive, at least with Rogue and Druid, if not Barb and Necromancer. So that's definitely an issue. So I just kind of wanted to stress that and go over it. I wanted to talk about Sorcerer in Season 4, where we're at, how we're doing, and where I currently sit. I am having the most fun I have ever had coming up with builds and theory crafting for you guys, yet it is difficult to argue we're not literally, in the definitive sense of it, the weakest class. But at the same time, it's also easy to argue that in content that isn't pit pushing, we could easily be seen as the best class, depending on what metric you're using. So it's a really interesting place, and technically that could be argued that it's actually in a pretty sweet spot, you know, strengths and weaknesses. I definitely think, ignoring Holy Bolts and how broken it is for Necromancer, the spread across the classes isn't the biggest. It's definitely been a lot bigger, and that's healthy to see, but for me, when it comes to how much sheer, viable, still powerful, fun, and fast build variety we have to work with, tied into the new tempering and items and affix changes that we've got, yeah, I think I am pretty satisfied with where Sorcerer currently sits. Though I do think the kind of global issues we've been dealing with for a while now, the over-reliance of needing a bajillion defensives on our bars to stay alive, though admittedly Sorcerer can get very, very tanky this season, which is nice. Look out for the next build coming very soon to see that, and it's also going to double up as the best bit pushing build, and I really can't wait to show you it. No, it's not Infinite Flame Shield G, so yeah, exciting, and we still really could do with a third enchantment slot or something that frees us from the reliance on burning synergy without just nerfing burning synergy so that it's no longer worth it, which would be the really wrong way to go about it, but there definitely is something there. But other than those two things, the mechanical base of the class I don't think has ever been better. It's just some literal broken things that need fixing, a few little tune-ups on certain numbers, a few useless aspects and uniques getting a little bit of a look at. So that kind of is where it is. What do you guys think? Knowing that Sorcerer is currently, again as I say this, the weakest class for pushing hard endgame content, do you still feel like, so, I'm having a great time playing Sorcerer, which kind of is where I'm at? Honestly, as much as it does suck to have to fight a pit boss for 2 solid minutes while Necromancers are killing 120 tiers higher in 10 seconds. It's hard not to look at that and go, really guys, how did this happen? But it's hard to tell how much of that is just literally bugged holy bolts over their raw strength. In any case, I would love to know your thoughts so far, and what build you are enjoying the most when it comes to this class. Like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.